You felt it. That morning after a night of 4 hours of sleep, when the simplest problem feels like calculus and your thoughts move through glue. You reach for caffeine, for willpower, for anything that will close the gap between what you know you're capable of and what your brain is actually delivering. But here's what nobody talks about. Some of the most productive minds in human history operated on schedules that should have shattered their cognition. Leonardo da Vinci slept 2 hours a day in 15-minute intervals. Nikola Tesla claimed 2 hours of nightly sleep plus brief catnaps. Thomas Edison limited himself to 3 or 4 hours, and they produced work that reshaped civilization. So what's the real story? Are they genetic outliers who somehow bypass the biology of sleep? Or have we been measuring the wrong thing? If that question lands the way it should, you already know the answer isn't simple. The gap between what you suspect and what the research confirms. That's the exact territory this channel explores. Subscribe if you want to keep uncovering these hidden architectures, the patterns that explain why some minds operate on a different frequency. And drop the word pattern in the comments if you've ever felt that gap between what you know and what the system expects. Let's freeze that experience for a moment. You're in a meeting at 10 in the morning. Someone is explaining a problem you already solved in your head 4 minutes into their first sentence. But you can't articulate it because your working memory feels like a screen with static. You know the pattern is there, but the retrieval pathway is gummed up. You stay silent. The room keeps circling. Now consider Tesla, sitting in his laboratory at 3 in the morning, rotating a mental model of a turbine across every axis, each bolt and stress point, calculated without a single physical prototype. He claimed he was at his sharpest during those nocturnal hours when everyone else was asleep. Not despite the lack of rest, but because of it. This is the paradox that the cognitive research has been circling for decades. Drummond and colleagues at the Journal of Neuroscience found that after 24 hours of total sleep deprivation, performance on verbal learning tasks dropped by 31%. Pilcher and Huffcutt's meta-analysis in Psychological Bulletin quantified the average loss across fluid intelligence measures at 30%. Kilgore's work in progress in brain research showed working memory capacity decreasing by 30% after just 36 hours awake. But here's the part that breaks the narrative. Those numbers describe one specific kind of sleep loss, the total, uninterrupted kind. What Tesla and Da Vinci practiced was something fundamentally different. They weren't skipping sleep. They were redistributing it. The Navy discovered this in a declassified 1965 experiment aboard the USS Albacore. Submariners on a polyphasic schedule of 3 hours core sleep plus 3 20-minute naps showed a 15% increase in alertness after 2 weeks. But the manual also notes something crucial. When the schedule extended beyond 4 weeks, complex problem-solving dropped by 30%. The architecture has a ceiling. Which brings us to a deeper question. If genius-level cognition can coexist with fragmented sleep patterns, what does that tell us about the relationship between rest and intelligence? The answer is not what you think. You're not just watching a video. You're inside the architecture. If this kind of structural thinking pulls you deeper, subscribe to be part of the community that questions the default lens. And tell us in the comments, what's one cognitive trade-off you've noticed in your own life? The inconsistency, the recovery, the groove you found on your own. Van Dongen's dose-response study in sleep showed that 2 consecutive nights of 4 hours produced a 28% drop in logical reasoning. But those were single-phase sleepers, forced into a compressed window. The geniuses built their architecture differently. Have you ever wondered why some people can function on less sleep without losing cognitive sharpness, while others fall apart after one bad night? The answer isn't genetic luck. It's structural trade-offs. The brain can recalibrate its filtering mechanisms when the sleep pattern is consistent, even if unconventional. The problem isn't the number of hours, it's the inconsistency. Lowe's study of 1,200 adolescents in sleep medicine found that those sleeping under 6 hours scored 7 points lower on a standard IQ measure than those sleeping 8 to 10. But again, conventional sleepers. The gap is real, but the method matters. Now here's where it gets interesting. When the smartest person in the room decides to stay silent, they're not being arrogant. They're measuring the gap between what they see and what the system can process. And the same mechanism that allows their cognitive engine to run on a different fuel is the reason they can't afford to run it on empty. The historical record shows that Da Vinci's polyphasic schedule was accompanied by obsessive note-taking and multiple projects running in parallel. Tesla's nocturnal bursts were followed by periods of complete recovery. They weren't running a marathon on fumes. They were sprinting in intervals, with full recovery between. You've felt that moment. When the system rewards speed over depth, and you're the only one who notices, your brain is not broken. It's calibrated for a different kind of processing. But that calibration comes with a cost. The evidence from Kirch's historical analysis of first and second sleep shows that pre-industrial humans naturally woke for an hour or two in the middle of the night. They weren't sleeping poorly. They were following a different architecture, the same architecture that the geniuses rediscovered. But here's the thing. You are not Tesla. You are not Da Vinci. And trying to replicate their schedule without understanding the mechanism will cost you exactly the 30% that the research predicts. The pattern is not the schedule itself. It's the consistency of the architecture. When you sleep erratically, you lose the cognitive edge because the brain never enters the state where it can recalibrate. The price is paid in fluid intelligence, working memory, pattern recognition, the variabilities that separate deep processing from surface understanding. Your gap isn't an absence. It's the space where the next pattern emerges, but only if you maintain the scaffold that allows it to form. The geniuses didn't ignore sleep. They engineered their relationship with it. And the cost of ignoring that engineering is not just tiredness. It's the 30% loss that you feel every time you reach for a thought that should be there and find static. This is the kind of understanding that separates depth from surface. Subscribe before the next pattern emerges. You don't want to miss what the architecture reveals next. And comment with the word threshold if you're ready to build your own. The lens isn't given. It's built, one consistent architecture at a time. And you're already holding the first piece.